That's right. We are back, Grit and Grace with Jennifer and Merideth. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm your girl, Merideth. Man, it's a beautiful Saturday, October 7th and 8:30. Now, real quick, one thing I did give the weather, but I didn't give the traffic. I just realized that.
Boo.
But I know. I'm like, dang, right when I thought I was going to pass the test for the day. But good thing is,
we had too much to catch up on.
I know. I'm like, and no offense to the traffic people in the world, but it's Saturday morning and traffic is good. Just to catch y'all up. Everything's good right now.
If you're going to Houston, check the map.
I know.
Look at Google.
That's what I do every day. Right now it's pulled up. Yeah, I know.
Real.
You got to be careful out there, especially because so many lane closures. And Houston is Houston. Like, you just got to get out
Don't
there.
drive on 290. It's all construction.
Right. Or NASCAR, a.k.a. 45, is always crazy town. So just check it out, right?
Yes.
So welcome back, everybody. We were just catching up because we've got Ian Ramirez here. And you may be familiar with his voice because he's joined us before. He's a hustler like Jen and I both. He's got, he does several things in the community. And one of them, of course, being with Madeira Estates, he's a huge principal there, does a lot of stuff for them. And he's, really if you are at all involved in an event, this man. And frankly, he knows how to get things done. It's amazing. So then as we're talking to him, he comes and he just kind of mentions in passing, he's like, well, yeah. And we're, because we pre-screen, we're talking, going out to the event, remember? And he was all, yeah, well, when I was doing opera in Germany, and we were like, okay, what? Hold on, what? Like, these are not things like, went to the Stop and Go. Oh, yeah, when I worked at, McDonald's.
The Stop and Go. We haven't had Stop and Go in at least 10 years.
Okay, well, guess what? When in Chicago, they still have 7-Eleven, man. So I was
there's 7-Eleven still in Texas still.
Oh, there are?
Slushies, come on.
Yeah.
Slurpee.
Oh, excuse me.
I got the 7-Eleven. Let me tell you, 7-Eleven bought Stripes.
Oh, good night. Look at her. She is
I know. So the Slurpee is coming back to Stripes.
Are you got some stock in this? Good night. Look at her.
No, but I should. When I moved to Austin, there was a 7-Eleven right across the street from my apartment.
Oh, you were so funny. I never got on the Slurpee kick. Okay, I'm not going to lie. But I hear obviously has a following. Yeah, okay, so nice.
Okay, back to Ian.
Thank you. All right, so yes, Ian Ramirez. He is jack of all trades in the talent world and artistry because this man... Ian, I'm in awe. Yesterday when we were talking, I was like, what? How can this be? So, okay, back up. I'm sorry, guys. I'm totally jumping in too quick. But yes, Ian Ramirez, he is opera singer and a voice instructor here in our area, but he didn't start here. So, Ian, catch us up on really how this all began because I'm just amazed by your life here so far. Mm-hmm. And he's a kid still, so he's still got, he's just getting started. I'm like, are you kidding? Yeah, so catch us up. How this all start?
Yeah, I started singing when I was in about the 5th grade in a boys' choir in the Woodlands.
Yeah.
Grew up in the area, and one of my voice instructors said, hey, you really have a voice. Why don't you take voice lessons? And so from there, throughout my schooling in middle school, junior high, high school, I was always in choir and theater, did all the musicals at the Woodlands High School and with class act community productions. And then I did this high school program at Houston Grand Opera. They actually have a program for high school seniors where they take 8 high school seniors and give them voice lessons. They give them scholarship to study in school.
8? 8. Wow.
And that's really where I got my first taste of opera. And we had free tickets to all the shows. And there was a competition at the end of the year between the 8 students for that scholarship for college. And I got it.
Wow.
No way.
Oh, my God.
It wasn't a lot of money, but still, it was a couple $1,000s to help me with scholarship
Hold on.
at school.
You're being very humble because that's why I was like 8. Like I imagine there were hundreds trying out. 8 get selected out of the 8. So, that just blows my mind. And the talent is amazing. So, yeah, stop. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no. And so that's really where I got my interest in opera because most young people aren't listening to opera. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And
most middle-aged people.
Yeah. And so for the longest time, musical theater was really what I really loved. And I think that's what still when young people get into music, they really like pop music or they like musical theater if they're into theater and choir. So then I went to school in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Conservatory, University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. And I was there for 6 years. So I did my bachelor's and my master's there. I stayed because I had a grad assistantship. And then from there, I started singing professionally in 2009. So still while I was in school. And I sang with some local companies in the Cincinnati area, Indianapolis Opera, Cincinnati Opera, Kentucky Opera. Then I got a gig in Portland Opera on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. And I lived there for 2 years. And then from there, I had a job in Stuttgart, Germany. So it's a very small world, the opera world. And and then I came back here last December.
See, and that just blows my mind because he gave you like the cliff notes and the quickness, but we're going to dive in and dissect that more.
Yeah, we can do that.
Awesome. Because, you were telling me, well, first of all, like your love for opera and how, because to me, yes, I'm a layman, obviously. And, going in and thinking about, we listen to a lot of the pop stuff and everything like that, but the training's got to be different a little bit more, right? Because
absolutely.
I didn't realize it till you mentioned it when we talked before, but there's no microphones in opera, is there?
No microphones. One of the biggest differences between musical theater and opera.
So you can project like a mother, like
over the orchestra. Oh yeah.
Oh, that is wild. So, I mean, I'm just amazed at really like how much you said. Now, of course, you're limited. You don't necessarily like musical instruments. You can't train for 5 or 6 hours a day. You do,
right.
But you really think of your voice as your instrument, right?
Oh, it is absolutely. And one of the biggest differences between an instrumentalist and a singer is that your body is your instrument versus if I'm a violinist or a trumpet player, you have a physical instrument to play.
Right.
But as a singer, we really have to take care of our bodies and our physical health because when we're sick, it affects our voices, right? And not that it doesn't affect somebody's playing, but at least they can play through the flu or something, right? They may not feel great, but their instrument physically is fine versus it takes a toll on your voice when you are sick. So physical fitness is really important for opera singers. You hear this stereotype of like, what is the saying? Until the fat lady sings.
Yeah.
You think of
It
the
ain't
lady
over
with the horn.
till
The fat lady
Yes.
sings. Or you think of the Ride of the Valkyries, the lady with the horns, and yes, that is an opera stereotype. But now opera is going the way of Hollywood and movies.
Yeah.
And they all want you to look like you're Ryan Reynolds or something, right?
You
And
could
so it's
definitely
very
pull it off.
heavily influenced by looks now.
Yeah, and you could totally pull it off. I was enjoying your hair earlier
Oh,
too.
thank you.
I was like commenting, and right now, of course, when you watch the YouTube, you'll be like, he has headphones on. You can't tell. This man's got a great do. You'll see it in the pic. I was like, man. So he, you can definitely fit that character because you're quite
Thank you,
handsome as
thank you.
well. But so when you're saying like you have to have your instrument, and I'm hopping all over because
Yeah.
I get excited when I talk
Yeah,
to
of
you. You know
course.
that. But so you can't drink sodas, or what are some of the things you avoid as far as consuming? What
It
are some of
depends.
the
I think it
no-nos?
really is a singer to singer basis. For me, I'm not one of those people that, I don't drink milk or I don't do sodas or caffeine. Clearly, I'm drinking coffee this morning. I drink milk. I do dairy things. But some people are very, not superstitious. What is the word?
Strict.
Strict, right? And they won't eat things that give them acid reflux or. And for me, I don't want it to depend on my normal day-to-day living. Of course, if I have a performance that day, I'm not going to go out and have like 3 beers.
Right.
Or I'm not going to go smoke a pack of cigarettes. Most singers don't smoke and most singers don't heavily drink, but there are those cases. There are very famous singers. You hear stories of them going at intermission to go have a cocktail in the bar of the theater, or they go have a cigarette or a cigar on intermission and then go back and sing.
Right.
So it really is just, you have to know yourself.
Sure.
Right. And I know how drinking affects my voice. I know how having spicy food affects my voice.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know
And
that.
so for example, I won't eat a heavy meal right before I sing. So I'll just bring little snacks and have it at the theater with me and eat as I'm going throughout the show to have energy.
Yeah.
But I just don't like to sing on a full stomach. And that's my personal preference.
Right.
But there are
Sure.
some singers that are like, I want to eat a full meal right before I sing because I like that feeling of being full and I have support. So it's just preference.
Wow,
Yeah.
that just blows my mind. And, it makes sense. Things affect you that you consume, but I just never, again, because I'm not a singer, professionally, that I just never had put those two things together. So,
Yeah.
and I just, because, the whole diaphragm thing, when people say that, it's completely foreign to me. So is that something y'all have to, when you're giving your lessons and teaching your students, how do you start with all that? I mean, listen, give me a diaphragm lesson, sir, because I don't get it. I don't.
I mean, I could go into the whole process of singing and breathing. It might be a little boring for our listeners, but I will say probably the biggest myth is, or one of the things you hear people say, they're like, breathe from your diaphragm, breathe from your diaphragm.
Yeah.
And you're not breathing from your diaphragm. Your diaphragm's not going to give you any support. It's an involuntary muscle when you breathe in and breathe out, right? It moves up and down. But to give you a short lesson to tell you, the difference between breathing for singing and breathing for speaking is that there's actually 4 phases in the breathing process for singing. So you have the inhalation, then you have this moment of suspension before you actually make any sound. Then you have what we call phonation, when the chords are actually coming together, when you're actually singing. And then you have the recovery.
Man.
And so in speaking, you take out the suspension phase.
Oh, okay, because when you're saying that, I'm like, as I'm like trying to follow along, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I've always heard, that whenever they talk about, don't sing from here, from your chest, from your, sing
Right.
from down low.
Right.
I know how to breathe properly from my diaphragm,
Right.
but I don't know how to sing from there.
Right. Yeah. And so the reason they tell you breathe from your diaphragm, I would never tell any of my students to do that, but the place where that comes from is you don't want people singing from the up here in the neck and the chest area. You want your support and you want the buoyancy. We talk about having a light and buoyant breath when you're singing, because I equate it to a ballet dancer. If a ballet dancer's on stage and they're just going around with all this weight and they dance, they're not light. And it's the same
Right.
thing with singing. If you sing too heavily, if you're using all this weight and you're sitting on the sound, then you're not going to have a lasting career.
That is, yeah, because you were talking about that, certainly the pop singers and opera singers, they have different habits and, everything.
Different techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The techniques, because you were saying like some of them, we've heard all about different artists that have to more or less take breaks because they may not have the best technique or take care of their voices
Right.
like they should. But that's a huge like faux pas for the opera singers. Like you have to stay on point,
Yes.
I imagine, right?
Oh, absolutely. And for career longevity, it's a huge thing. You hear of these opera singers that sing into their 70s and their voices are healthy as could be. And then you hear of these pop singers that are in their mid 20s and they're already having vocal surgery.
Yeah, and that just blows my mind because, I had mentioned to you how I was so excited because I heard that Placido Domingo is going to be in San Antonio, and I love the idea of being able to see him. And, it brought to mind, I'm like, well, yeah, because, normally when you think of going to see, for instance, the country artists or pop artists that you loved as a kid, and it's like 25 years later, you're thinking, oh, they're going to be good for, not as great as they once were. But that's not always the case with opera singers, right? You can still, like, if I did have a chance to afford and won the lotto to go see Placido, because those tickets aren't cheap,
Right.
that he would be still as powerful and, just beautiful as he was in his, I know not necessarily as he was when he's 20,
Right.
but he's still powerful and being able to bring it, if you will.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think if you're singing healthily, an opera singer can have a career for at least 30 years. Start
Wow.
singing in their mid-20s into their 50s if they're having, really good technique. But then, younger and beautiful people come along with talent. And so they want to, everybody's focused on the youngest and newest best thing, right?
Yes,
It's like the
right.
newest toy. It's the newest iPhone that comes out. Everybody wants to find the newest talent. So that happens, of course. But
Sure.
with international stars like Placido, he's still singing.
Oh.
His voice, his technique is still there for the most part. And but then you hear about pop singers that ruin their voices in 10 years.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens in opera. There are
Right,
definitely young
right.
singers that people are really impressed with. They have big voices, and so they just push and push and push, and then they blow out their voice in 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I worry when I hear some about the younger kids, like, the 6, 7, the tweens, and even early teenagers that are found on, like, America's Got Talent. Yeah, and then I'm just worried. I'm like, it's beautiful, but just worry for, longevity for just speaking and talent for
Yeah.
that. So, but it is doable if you stay on a disciplined schedule.
Well, and my suggestion would only be, it's like, you just have to assign age appropriate music to these kids, right? I'm not going to assign an opera aria to some 7-year-old.
Right.
Personally, I like to teach students when they're starting about middle school, junior high. Before that, you're not really working on technique so much. You're laying foundation, of course.
Sure.
But the capacity for them to really retain what you're teaching them is a lot less when they're younger. So if they're wanting to take voice lessons just for fun, yeah, absolutely, of course.
Well, plus you have to deal with their voices changing.
It's really hard. I mean, even in high school, the guys that I teach, some of them are struggling with that voice change, and it's just part of life that you have to help them struggle through that a little bit,
yeah.
right? And what I tell them, I was like, you're in the studio, make mistakes, let your voice crack. I crack when I practice. It means you're learning how to take out tensions in your voice.
Right.
So my motto is crack is whack and let it happen in the studio. So
You are so hilarious. I love this guy. And that is I guess I did not know. Crack is whack. Listen, I can't speak. I'm like, but I want to take lessons from you. So
yeah,
That was something Whitney Houston said.
Oh, it was
crack is whack.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. She did actually.
That's so funny. I'm sorry, but yeah, and she had her technique problems too, right?
Yes.
Because she,
So, yes.
and then she dived into probably other things that affected her voice, and but yeah, no. What were you gonna say, Jen? I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna, ask. You have to learn a foreign language, right?
Oh, absolutely. So opera singers tend to sing at least in 3 or 4 languages. Italian,
Really? Yeah,
German,
I was gonna say I knew Italian,
French, English, Russian, Spanish, Czech operas.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
There's a little bit of everything.
So okay.
So how many languages do you speak?
German is probably my best language because I lived there for a year and a half and I studied very intensively. Then Italian. I studied in Italy for 2 summers. I was telling Meredith the other day. And then Spanish and French are a little conversational in. Russian, not so much. Czech, no. But I would say the biggest languages you sing in would be, as an American singer, Italian, German, French, and English.
Are there American operas?
Oh yeah, American opera is huge right now.
Is it? Because when I think of operas, it's always in a foreign language.
Well, I think Italian.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was commenting that I'm like, you can say, like, I was talking about one of the products we market in one of my day job, and I was like, it's so a B2B, like, piece of steel, but man, it sounds beautiful, magazzino, and I'm like,
Yeah, I know, right? And you throw a little foreign spin on it, it's like yes.
Yes,
I
exactly.
know. It could be like, how do you say? I don't know how you say trash in Italian, but it would be beautiful. Nonetheless, I'm like, man, that's nice. Anyway. I'm not going to pretend. Okay, so that being said, okay, you're fluent in English only. Okay, it's your native tongue. How does this all begin? You go and audition, and then you just kind of learn the song and try to pick up on the cadence and the dialect, and then you start kind of just submerging yourself in all of the language?
Yeah, so I would say there's actually a lot of more facets to becoming an opera singer that people may not realize. So when you go to conservatory or any public school that you go to, college, what have you, you take diction classes. So you take diction classes in how to pronounce the words in foreign languages. You take language classes. So in college, I took a year of Spanish, Italian, French, and German. So every year of my bachelor's, I took a different language for a whole year. Then, as I said, I studied in Italy for 2 summers, studying music and language. Then when I lived in Germany, when I was working there professionally, on my own volition, I started taking German lessons, and my class was Monday through Friday for 4.5 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
And so it takes time to learn a language. And so at this point, I don't have to go back and I work on pronunciation still. But once you do it for so many years, you know how to pronounce the words in those foreign languages. But beginning out, you have to take diction classes. You have to learn. You write out this thing called the International Phonetic Alphabet. You learn how to pronounce every word in every language. And you really have to study that. You take music history in school. You take music theory. Music theory is very difficult. You take 3 years of it in college. So it's not just simply getting up there and singing. There's a lot of training that goes into it. Learning opera history, learning characterization. I mean, we're actors too, and we take movement, we take acting classes. There's many steps that go into it. And as I told you earlier, opera singers tend to train a lot longer than other singers because your voice is developing until your mid-20s.
It just blows my mind because yes, and even though I haven't seen it live, to go and even watch it on PBS, it's just beautiful. But, I'm just amazed at how much goes behind, to really develop until you're on the stage. I mean, and y'all are because of course, not to sound all silly, but I'm like, man, you're beautiful and have a great voice. But gosh, after talking and learning more about the process, it's like, y'all are super smart. I mean, you have to be able to take on all this stuff and be just, really able to stay on your toes, if you will, learning different languages and learning, like you said, the music theory and history, which, I think is just amazing because, yes, it's one thing to be given the God talent, but, God-given talent of being able to have, being able to sing, but to be able to take on and really be that disciplined, it just blows my mind because, it's well beyond, this lady's head. I'm like, that is amazing. So I want you to stick around, though, because we have, because I know I want more. I want more of it, okay?
I know we can talk forever.
We really could. So we're going to take a quick break, and we may just have Ian pretty much stick around as long as we can keep him, all right? So everybody, we've got more Grit and Grace with Jennifer and Merideth coming up next.
Yes, that is us, Grit and Grace with Jennifer and Meredith. Honey loves that.
This is so blooming
That's
cute.
her favorite one.
It is. Well, and it's Jin's favorite too. Every time she hears that liner from her little man, she just is kind of like, and she just is in thinking about her boy. She just kind of gets lost in it. So yes, that's why she was like,
it's so cute.
Welcome back.
I know. Yeah, that's us. Grit and Grace, Jennifer and Meredith.
Yes, we're here every Saturday morning from 8 to 10. We have a few minutes before we got to do our 9 o'clock ID, but Ian is joining us, and I've asked him to kind of stay because we were just gabbing about his opera days, but I want to get to what you're doing now because I know you're still involved. And of course, guys, if you're just tuning in, Ian Ramirez, opera singer and voice instructor here locally. He's just an amazing talent. And pretty much a homegrown, right? Because you're from the Woodlands. And I forget that because you're so worldly. Because of course, when you hear about his journey, he's, been, of course, studying in Cincinnati, but he's been performing in grand operas over, you were saying Kentucky, Cincinnati, Seattle. He studied in Italian, studied in Italy, and then also has been performing professionally. In all those areas, and also abroad in Germany. So on top of that, we learned he's just not a pretty face that can sing. He's super smart. He's got all these languages under his belt and more or less schooling us on how, there's so much behind it, being an opera singer. So that being said, I know you're, doing many things right now, but one of them happens to be voice instructing, right?
Yes.
So really, is it because your passion and your love for it, you just want to be able to inspire others?
Absolutely. I find it really fascinating when I find other driven young people like I was when I was growing up that really have a passion for music.
Right.
And so I want to be able to share the knowledge that I have acquired over my journey with these young students. And so right now I've started my own voice studio. I'm teaching at Oak Ridge High School, some of the students in the choir there. And I'll probably take on a few private students as well in the area.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm also I sing professionally, and I am preparing a recital in the area. So I'll be sure when that is ready to go, the dates and times, I'll be sure to share it with you guys so we can share it with everyone.
Please
and it'll be probably a whole recital in German, so everybody can see how my language skills have developed. And then, I'll be doing some local auditions in Houston, going to New York probably in December to do some more opera auditions. But that's probably all I have coming up right now.
All you have coming up?
Well, in addition to everything else that I'm doing.
I was about to say, this man, and he already told us straight up, he's like, I can hang out, but only for a few minutes. I've got somewhere to be by 9:30. We were like, oh, okay. So he is a mover and a shaker in the community. We are so thankful he's here with us. So that being said, like on the voice instruction, so you are, you're up for the private students, but I'm sure the kids have got to be thrilled to have you in the administration back at Oak Ridge. How much does it mean to be given back to what, helped to inspire and, really get you where you are today as far as, starting out and giving you that passion?
Of course.
Now, does there happen to be the same music instructor or choir instructor there that you worked with as a student?
So actually, it's a small world. I sing at the Methodist Church in the Woodlands, United Methodist Church, and I grew up singing in the youth choir there. And my choir director is on the music staff at the church, but he also taught me at the Woodlands High School. And now he's one of the fine arts directors of Conroe ISD, Bob Horton. And my prom date sings in her husband sing in the church choir with me. but her husband is the choir director at Oak Ridge. And so that's how I got
Wow.
that teaching position there.
It is such a small world.
It's a very small world, yeah.
Well, and that's so cool to know that, certainly, and I'm not surprised, but that, those programs in our school, community school districts really help to carry through. And man, it's great to hear, someone that
absolutely.
did something that really is sticking with it kind of thing. That's really great. Well, and, I know we were just coming back for a few minutes because, we've got to take care of business, but I want to make sure that you stick around too, because I want some insight on what you thought about our top 3 and some of our opera inspirations. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So stick around, guys. I know we just had a short one. We're going to just kick to the ID, and then we'll be right back for some more of Grit and Grace with Jennifer and Merideth.
You're listening.